I pulled into the parking lot of Meadowbrook Apartments just after noon. The paint on the building was fading, but it was a decent place. My brother had lived here for almost 5 years. I visit him every month, but this time something felt different. My nephew had been avoiding my calls. I climbed the stairs to the second floor and knocked on apartment 2B. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. James? It's Thomas. You there? I heard shuffling inside, then my brother's voice, weak and uncertain. Tommy? Yeah, it's me. Open up. The door cracked open, and what I saw stopped my heart. My brother stood there in clothes I recognized from months ago, stained and wrinkled. His face was gaunt, cheekbones sharp beneath skin that looked almost gray. The apartment behind him was dark. James, what the hell? He stepped back to let me in, and the smell hit me. Stale air, unwashed dishes, something worse underneath. The living room was barely recognizable. Empty cans lined the counter. The furniture looked the same, but everything was covered in a film of neglect. The TV was gone. So was the microwave. Where's your TV? James lowered himself carefully into his recliner, the only piece of furniture that looked used. Danny took it, said it was broken, needed to get it fixed. 3 months ago? I asked. Because that's when I'd last been here, and the TV had been fine. Maybe. I don't remember exactly. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. James was only 72, 6 years older than me. He'd had a stroke 3 years back that left his right side weak and his memory spotty, but he wasn't senile. He lived on his disability check and Social Security, about $3,200 a month. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough for this place. Food, medicine. He should be comfortable. Have you eaten today? He glanced toward the kitchen. I think there's some crackers. I went to check. The refrigerator was nearly empty, except for a carton of milk 2 weeks past its expiration date, and half a loaf of bread showing green spots. The freezer had nothing. The cupboards held a box of stale crackers and 1 can of soup. James, where's your food money? Danny handles all that. He comes every month, takes care of everything. When did he come last? My brother's brow furrowed. Last week? Maybe 2 weeks? I pulled out my phone and called Danny. Straight to voicemail. I tried his wife, Rachel. Same thing. I'd been trying to reach them for a week, ever since I'd called James and he'd mentioned he was hungry but couldn't remember when Danny was coming by. Has Danny been giving you cash? For groceries? He takes care of it. He's busy with the new house. New house? Yeah, they moved. Bigger place. For the kids. Danny and Rachel had 3 kids. Last I knew, they lived in a rental house in Riverside. I hadn't heard about a new house. I'd been out of town a lot the past 6 months, dealing with my own wife's cancer treatment. Linda was in remission now, thank God, but I'd been so focused on her that I'd let my monthly visits to James slide to phone calls a couple times. Guilt twisted in my gut. Let me go get you some groceries. We'll figure this out. I spent $200 at the store, filling his refrigerator and cupboards. While I put things away, I noticed more missing items. The coffee maker was gone. A set of dishes. His good winter coat wasn't on the hook by the door. James, did Danny take your coat too? He said he'd get me a new one. That one was old. It had been a Columbia jacket I'd given him 2 Christmases ago. $300. After I made James a proper meal and watched him eat like a man who hadn't seen real food in weeks, I went home and called my lawyer. Frank Hendricks had handled my will and some business stuff over the years. He trusted him. Frank, I need to know about financial elder abuse. How do I prove it? There was a pause. Who are we talking about? My brother. I think my nephew's been stealing from him. Does the nephew have power of attorney? I don't know. James never mentioned it. Find out and start documenting everything. What have you seen? I told him about the empty apartment, the missing items, James's condition. Get his bank statements. If the nephew has access to the accounts, we need to see where the money's going. This is serious, Thomas. If he's got POA and he's misusing it, that's a felony. The next morning I went back to James's apartment. I brought my laptop and a scanner I'd bought. James, I need to look at your bank statements. Can you show me? He seemed confused but led me to a drawer in his bedroom. Inside were unopened envelopes from the bank, 3 months' worth. We opened them together. My hands shook as I read the statements. James's disability check and Social Security were direct deposited on the first of each month, but within days, most of the money was gone. Withdrawals at ATMs, transfers to an account I didn't recognize, checks written to cash. In 3 months, nearly $9,000 had been drained from his account, leaving just enough to cover his rent through automatic payment. James, did you make these withdrawals? He stared at the paper, squinting. Danny has my card. For groceries. $400 at a time? Multiple times a month? I don't. He said he was handling things. I scanned every statement I could find, going back 6 months. The pattern was clear. It had started small, a couple hundred here and there, but in the last 3 months, it had accelerated. Danny was taking everything except the rent money. I called Frank again. I've got the statements. It's bad. Bring them to my office tomorrow. We need to file a police report. That evening, I finally got through to Danny. He answered with a cheerful voice that made me want to reach through the phone. Uncle Thomas! Sorry I've been so busy. The new house. You know how it is. I know you've been stealing from your father. Silence. That's not true. I've been helping him. He can't manage money anymore. Someone has to... Helping him? He's starving. His apartment looks like a crack house. Where's the $3,200 a month going, Danny? His expenses... His rent is $1,100. His insurance is covered. Where's the rest? Uncle Thomas, you don't understand. He needs care. I've been paying for things. Show me the receipts. I don't have to explain myself to you. I'm his son. I have power of attorney. It's legal. So he did have POA. My stomach sank. Legal power of attorney doesn't mean you can rob him blind. I've got his bank statements, Danny. I know what you've been doing. His voice changed, got harder. Stay out of this. You weren't around. You were too busy with Linda. Someone had to step up. He hung up. I sat there, staring at my phone. He was right about one thing. I hadn't been around enough. I'd let my own crisis pull me away from my brother, but that didn't give Danny the right to do this. The next morning I met with Frank. He reviewed the statements and let out a low whistle. This is clear-cut financial exploitation. You said he has power of attorney? That's what he claims. We need to see that document. But even with POA, he has a fiduciary duty. This looks like theft. You need to file a police report and petition the court for emergency guardianship. Will it work? With this evidence? Yes. But you need to understand something, Thomas. This is going to tear your family apart. Are you ready for that? I thought about James, sitting in that dark apartment, confused and hungry. I thought about Danny's new house, bought with money stolen from his own father. I'm ready. We went to the police station that afternoon. Detective Maria Santos took my statement and reviewed the evidence. She was in her 40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner. Mr. Brennan, I'm going to be straight with you. Elder financial abuse is one of the hardest crimes to prosecute. Family members can claim they were helping, that the money was used for care. Do you have evidence of where the money actually went? Not yet, but he bought a new house, and my brother's living in poverty. We'll need to prove the connection. I'll open an investigation, but you should also pursue the civil route. Get that guardianship. That'll give you access to all his financial records and the ability to press charges if we find criminal behavior. Over the next 2 weeks, I became my brother's shadow. I moved him temporarily into my spare bedroom over his protests. I took him to his doctor, who was alarmed by his weight loss and malnutrition. I got it all documented. I hired a forensic accountant that Frank recommended, and I started digging into Danny's life. The accountant, Jennifer Wu, was worth every penny of her $200 hourly rate. She traced the withdrawals and transfers from James's account. $5,000 had been transferred to an account in Rachel's name. The ATM withdrawals matched deposits into Danny's personal account within days. Check stubs showed medical expenses and care costs, but when we contacted the medical providers, none of them had received payment. Jennifer found more. Danny had used his father's debit card at a car dealership, putting down a $5,000 down payment on a new SUV. He'd used it at furniture stores, electronics stores, even a jewelry store. He wasn't even trying to hide it, Jennifer said, showing me the reports. He probably thought no one would check. Your brother's mental state gives him cover. He can claim it was all authorized. But it wasn't. I know, and I can prove it. Look at this. She pulled up Danny's credit card statements, which we'd subpoenaed through the investigation. His cards were maxed out. He was 2 months behind on his old rent before he moved. Then suddenly, 3 months ago, he starts making large payments. Pays off 2 credit cards completely. Puts a down payment on a house. Where did that money come from? My brother. Exactly. And I can show the timeline. The dates match. Money leaves your brother's account, and within 48 hours, Danny's debt disappears. The guardianship hearing was set for a month out. In the meantime, I got a restraining order preventing Danny from accessing James's accounts or property. Danny fought it, hired a lawyer, claimed I was the one exploiting James. But the evidence was too strong. The judge granted a temporary order. Danny called me that night. "You're destroying our family over money. Dad would be so ashamed of you. Dad would be ashamed of a son who steals from his own father. I took care of him when you couldn't be bothered to show up. I earned that money. You stole it, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it." He hung up, but not before I heard Rachel crying in the background. The hearing was in Judge Patricia Morgan's courtroom. James sat beside me, confused about why we were there. I tried to explain, but he kept forgetting. The stroke had affected his short-term memory badly. Danny and Rachel sat on the other side with their lawyer, a sharp-looking woman in an expensive suit. They'd clearly spent money on representation. More of James's money, probably. Judge Morgan reviewed the evidence. Jennifer testified about the financial analysis. James's doctor testified about his cognitive state and malnutrition. I testified about what I'd found. Danny's lawyer tried to paint me as an absent relative who was now trying to control my brother's finances. Then it was Danny's turn. He took the stand and spun a story about how he'd been caring for his father, how the money had gone to legitimate expenses, how I had abandoned James during my wife's illness. "My uncle wasn't there," Danny said, his voice breaking convincingly. "I was the one making sure Dad was okay. I was the one handling everything." "Then explain the ATM withdrawals," Frank said during cross-examination. "Explain the car down payment. Explain the jewelry purchases. Dad wanted me to have those things. He told me to use his card. He wanted to help us." "Did he tell you to leave him without food? Without basic necessities?" "He had food. I was just there. You hadn't been to his apartment in 6 weeks before my client found him. The bank records show you hadn't used his card for any grocery purchases in that time. Where was the food, Mr. Brennan?" Danny faltered. I gave him cash. There's no record of cash withdrawals for that purpose. And your father's medical records show he was malnourished. If you were caring for him, how did that happen?" Danny looked at his lawyer, but she had no answer for that. Judge Morgan called a recess. When we returned, her face was stern. "I've reviewed all the evidence presented today. Mr. Daniel Brennan, I find that you have violated your fiduciary duty as power of attorney. The evidence shows a clear pattern of financial exploitation. I'm granting emergency guardianship to Mr. Thomas Brennan, effective immediately. All power of attorney privileges held by Daniel Brennan are hereby revoked." She turned to Detective Santos, who'd been sitting in the back of the courtroom. "Detective, I'm formally recommending that your office pursue criminal charges. This isn't just civil. This is theft." Danny's face went white. Rachel started crying harder. The detective arrested Danny 2 weeks later. The district attorney charged him with felony elder abuse, theft, and financial exploitation. The charges carried a maximum of 6 years in prison. I moved James into an assisted living facility, a nice place with good care. It cost $2,200 a month, but his Social Security and disability covered it with some left over. He had friends there, activities, 3 meals a day. He gained weight. The confusion in his eyes faded a little. The criminal trial took 8 months. Danny's lawyer tried for a plea deal, but the DA wouldn't budge. The evidence was too strong, and the judge from the guardianship hearing had made it clear this needed to be prosecuted. Jennifer's testimony was devastating. She walked the jury through every transaction, showing how Danny had systematically drained his father's accounts. The doctor testified about James's condition when I'd found him. I testified about the empty apartment, the missing items, my brother's hunger. Danny took the stand in his own defense. It was a mistake. The DA tore him apart. "You claimed you were caring for your father, but you hadn't visited him in 6 weeks. True or false?" I was busy with my family." "Your family that was living in a new house purchased with your father's money?" "That's not. You made a down payment of $41,000 on that house. Your bank records show you didn't have that money. Your credit cards were maxed out. Where did the down payment come from? Danny's lawyer objected, but the judge overruled it. Where did the money come from, Mr. Brennan? My father helped us. By starving? Is that how he helped you? The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They found Danny guilty on all counts. At sentencing, Judge Morgan looked at Danny with something like disgust. Mr. Brennan, you exploited the one person who should have been able to trust you completely. Your father, who raised you, cared for you, and loved you, was left to suffer while you bought cars and houses with his money. You showed no remorse, no acknowledgement of the harm you caused. The court sentences you to 4 years in state prison, followed by 3 years of probation. You are ordered to pay full restitution of $87,000, representing all funds stolen from your father, plus interest. You are permanently barred from any position of financial responsibility over any person. Rachel divorced Danny while he was awaiting prison. She kept the house, claimed she hadn't known what he was doing. Maybe that was true, maybe not. I didn't push it. The kids didn't need to lose everything. I visit James 3 times a week now. He's doing well. His memory is still spotty, but he's healthy, clean, fed. Sometimes he asks about Danny. Is my son coming to visit? I don't have the heart to tell him the whole truth, how his son robbed him, left him starving, chose greed over family. So I just say, Danny's not able to visit right now. Oh, okay. When you see him, tell him I love him. It breaks my heart every time. I changed my own will after this. Everything goes to my daughter Sarah, but she doesn't get control until I'm gone. And I've made sure there are safeguards, regular audits, oversight. I never want her to face the temptation Danny couldn't resist. My brother is safe now. But I carry the guilt of those months I wasn't there, when I was so focused on Linda's treatment that I didn't see what was happening. I should have known. I should have checked. Linda tells me I can't blame myself, that I was dealing with a crisis, that no one expects that kind of betrayal from family. But late at night, I think about James sitting in that dark apartment, confused and hungry, wondering when his son was coming back. And I know I failed him. Danny gets out in 3 years with good behavior. I don't know what happens then. I don't know if James will even remember him. Sometimes that seems like a mercy. The worst part isn't the money, though $87,000 is no small thing. The worst part is what Danny destroyed. He didn't just steal money. He stole his father's dignity, his health, his security. He stole the trust a parent should be able to have in their child. And for what? A bigger house? A nicer car? Things he couldn't afford on his own, so he took them from the one person who couldn't fight back? I see Rachel sometimes, at the grocery store or around town. She never looks at me. I don't blame her. What do you say to someone whose nephew destroyed their own father for money? Sorry doesn't cover it. James asked me yesterday why he doesn't have much in his savings anymore. The facility administrator and I have been careful with his remaining money, but years of theft took its toll. I told him there had been some unexpected expenses, that everything was handled now. He nodded and went back to watching TV. He doesn't remember that his son did this to him. Maybe that's a blessing. Maybe forgetting is the only mercy in this whole mess. I bought James a new TV for his room at the facility. A nice one, bigger than he needs. He was so happy when I set it up, said it was too much, that I shouldn't spend money on him. I told him it was nothing, just something I wanted to do. What I didn't tell him was that it cost less than 1 week of the money Danny had stolen. What I didn't tell him was that every time I see him happy now, safe and cared for, I think about those months when he wasn't. When he was alone, confused, hungry, and his son didn't care as long as the ATM kept working. Danny sent a letter from prison last month. It came to my house, not to James. I almost threw it away without reading it, but something made me open it. It was 2 pages of excuses. He was in over his head. His wife spent too much. The kids needed things. He'd meant to pay it back. He hadn't understood how bad things had gotten for his dad. He was sorry. He hoped I could forgive him. There was no mention of asking for his father's forgiveness. No acknowledgement that what he'd done to James was worse than what he'd done to me. It was all about him, his problems, his intentions. Even in prison, even after everything, he didn't really get it. I wrote back. 1 line. Your father asks about you. He says he loves you. He doesn't remember what you did to him. I do. You never heard back. The forensic accountant, Jennifer, told me that elder financial abuse is epidemic. Family members steal billions from elderly parents and relatives every year. Most of it never gets reported because the victims are too confused, too scared, or too ashamed. The abusers are often people the victims love and trust. You did the right thing, she said. A lot of people in your position would have confronted the nephew, accepted some kind of repayment, and moved on. By pressing criminal charges, you protected not just your brother, but sent a message. Maybe. But it doesn't feel like a victory. It feels like I'm holding together the pieces of something that can never be fixed. My daughter Sarah called after the sentencing. She'd followed the case in the news. Dad, I can't imagine doing that to you. How could he? Greed, I said. It makes people capable of things they'd never think they could do. Promise me you'll tell me if you ever need help. Real help. I would never. I know, sweetheart. I know. But do I? Did James know? Did he ever think his son would steal from him, leave him to starve, lie to his face while spending his disability checks on a new SUV? Trust is a fragile thing, and once it's broken like this, I don't think it ever fully heals. I've started a program at the senior center, educating families about financial abuse. I tell my story. I show the warning signs. I teach people what to look for. If I can save one family from going through this, maybe it's worth something. James lives his days in comfort now. He plays cards with the other residents. He watches his shows. He eats 3 meals a day and takes his medicine on time. He's safe. But sometimes I catch him staring out the window, and I wonder if somewhere in his damaged memory he knows what his son did. If he remembers those dark weeks alone in that apartment, hungry and confused, waiting for someone to care. I hope he doesn't. I hope his mind has given him that mercy. Because I remember for both of us, and that's burden enough. Danny will be out of prison in 3 years. James will be 75. I'll be 69. And somewhere in that future, Danny might want to see his father again, might want forgiveness. I don't know what I'll do when that day comes. I don't know if I have it in me to forgive what he did. I don't know if James, trapped in his fading memory, should be protected from the truth or allowed to make his own choice. All I know is that family is supposed to mean something. It's supposed to mean protection, love, trust. Danny took those words and twisted them into something ugly, using his position as son to destroy his father. And I can never forget that, even if James can. The check for restitution comes every month, deducted from Danny's prison wages. $12. At that rate, it'll take him 500 years to pay back what he stole. The money goes into an account for James, but it's not really about the money anymore. It's about the principle. It's about consequences. It's about making sure that somewhere in a prison cell, Danny is reminded every month of what he did. I visit James tomorrow. I'll bring him his favorite cookies and we'll watch football. He'll be happy to see me, the way he always is. He'll ask if I've heard from Danny, and I'll give him the same answer I always do. And I'll remind myself that this is what matters now. Not the money that was stolen or the justice that was served. Just making sure James's last years are good ones. Making sure he knows he's loved and cared for. Making sure he never has to be hungry and alone again. That's my responsibility now. My brother, my duty, my promise. I failed him once. I won't fail him again.